Hello, I'm Jeff Radical, here today to talk to you a little bit on the behalf of AMT about B2B marketing and sales trends in 2020. Looking forward to this conversation. And again, thank you to AMT for inviting me to be a part of this. So let's start by talking a little bit about what everybody is facing in 2020. And a lot of this stuff, this really describes what we've all dealt with in 2020. We've got a global pandemic. There's a ton of market uncertainty, politics and media as we approach the elections, trying to figure out what's going to happen next. We've got protests that have been going on. I live in Minneapolis and downtown, so have felt that personally. We have the inability to travel as sales leaders and marketing leaders. And then there's just all the financial concerns that are happening right now as business has gone up and gone down over the last number of months. And there's some question of, well, where are we going to go next? Then on top of that, as a business leader, I'm sure you're struggling a little bit internally, as all of us are, with how long is this going to last and what should I do next? And, am I going to be able to weather the storm, or am I going to be able to do the things that are necessary to put the business in a position where the business can weather the storm? If you're feeling this way, if you're thinking these things, you are not alone. We talk to clients all the time. These are very common things that they're feeling. So with that, a little bit of background on myself. So I'm an MBA and an engineer by degree, and I've spent the last 20 years in manufacturing, basically in every seat, from ops to engineering to sales to marketing, running international businesses, doing acquisition work, all of it. And so and also as a board member for Manufacturers Alliance, which is an organization of hundreds of manufacturers, an association that comes together with that as well. I've really had an opportunity to speak to a lot of business leaders, whether it's the CEO, presidents, owners, those that are in the VP or a business leadership level. And so part of what I want to share with you today is both the research that we've done for my organization, which I'm the owner and the founder of, but also give you some of the feedback for what we're hearing and what people are seeing as we go forward. Really, the desire for me when I started my own business was to help other business leaders that are in that same spot. And so let's talk a little bit about before COVID. And everybody can try to think back, although it seems like a lifetime ago, right? January of 2020. And you all remember it, while it seems like a while back, sales were probably growing. You were probably beating forecast already, and you're looking at, hey, this is going to be a great year, right? And then March hits. And we all know kind of the story as it goes from there. But what I think is important as part of our conversation today is to understand where things were back in January of 2020, even before COVID hit. So I'm going to start there today to give you what was already happening in January of 2020 before the pandemic. And so one of the things right out is we're going to talk about sales and marketing best practices and trends that are going on. Is the trends, even in January, we're already moving the B2B buyer to more of a B2C experience. So what do I mean by that? So first off, 75% of B2B buyers were already buying online in January of 2020. And if you look at the chart on the right, where it really talks about the online versus offline preferences, the vast majority of people in red were already buying online, but there was even more of a desire to buy more online back in January. Again, prior to COVID, prior to everybody working as much remotely, there was already a demand driving the B2B experience to become more of a B2C experience. Once more is when you look at the buying habits of people at that time and what they were going to look for and what they were trying to find online, as an example, is there was already a preference to access this information online, not necessarily to have a sales guy come in and talk to them, but to actually be able to go out on their own, online, and source out things like products, part information, inventory availability, what's the delivery details, without having to pick up a phone, without having to talk to anybody, but able to go online and find that. And even things as simple as, I want to learn about this organization to see if I want to do more business with them. Very important pieces like customer testimonials and customer reviews of products in the B2B space was already in January an important piece of the equation. And I think it may or may not be a shock to you, because I know for a lot of people we talk to it is, but even in January of 2020, before the pandemic, 30% of the B2B buyers wanted to buy 90% of their products or whatever they're buying online. So let me take a step back from it. If you aren't already online selling, there's a high probability that 30% of your customers already want to be buying online most of their stuff. And that doesn't even include the 75% we've already talked about. So even if this wasn't a topic, it is going to become a topic. And I just need everybody to understand that prior to the pandemic, this was already where things were at. The other thing is, and again, highlighting this, is this whole kind of no human experience, right? So you've probably seen the commercials of the rental car agency, and I won't name the names. The guy's like, no humans, right? I just don't want to deal with anybody. I'm the typical, business executive that wants to walk and not talk to anybody, get in my car and move away, right? That's the reason that commercial exists, is because they're targeting us as an audience, and we would rather just stay in our bubble, get the work done, and move on, and not have to have a lot of these extra experiences, because we're so bombarded every day anyway, right? Your customers are feeling that way too. And a lot of your customers are other people like you, right? So this B2B buyer experience, looking for that kind of no human interaction, was already in place, was already moving that way in January. So this idea of, hey, I can go somewhere, check out, buy what I want quickly, repeat order when I need to quickly, get my delivery fast, and then just be able to trace it through the whole process. That Amazon shopping experience, I want that everywhere I go, not just on Amazon, but with all of the interactions that I'm doing. And so back to that 30% want to buy 90% of their stuff online. I think it's important to understand that a B2B buyer, a third of them, would choose a vendor strictly on the fact that they could place, pay, and track an order online. So think about that from a switching standpoint. Both your current customers wanting to switch to someone who can do that, and you finding new customers because you can offer it. And that was already in place in January, okay? The other thing that's coming up is the automation that's happening, and it can be a little bit overwhelming, quite frankly, in the sales and marketing world. All the automation going on. Everybody talks about CRMs, and they talk about marketing automation and social media, and should I really be doing all of that? I think the important thing is to look at it from a buyer perspective. Buyers in general are seeing that in the next 5 years, they're going to see automation actually increase and actually take away some of these additional transactions that they have to do to automate the process better for them. So in the future, instead of me actually having to go out and place the order myself, I just want to set up a way for it automatically to place when my inventory runs low. Or I want to set up a way where I can have a bot or somebody go out there and check everybody that carries this type of product and give me a kind of a vendor research model of what's available. Or I want to look at a way to optimize my own cost structure by pulling vendors together and having some modeling done around what I can do around that. Or I want to prevent order. All of these things that people are already starting to talk about now, that companies that are on the pioneer end are already starting to do, is coming. And so again, back in January of 2020, these were already discussions that were going on, already things that were happening. So let me set that groundwork to kind of frame everybody for what we're talking about going forward. So then COVID hits. It's not January anymore. We're moving into March, April. I was actually supposed to fly to Italy the last week of February. I was one of, right before Italy shut down. I get this journey, right? And so as we're looking at March hitting, and everybody's still trying to figure out, March numbers might have been great in the first half of March, depending on your business, and then March they started tanking, but April for sure was rough for most people, right? And so you think about everybody putting their April hat on, right, for a second, and I'm sorry to make you think back to April a little bit, but put your April hat on for a second, right? So you go back to April and you kind of remember what life was like, right? A lot of companies are down in the B2B space, 30%. We've talked to clients in some cases, if you're talking trade show industry, basically shut off, right? And so you're looking at these industries where all of a sudden revenue's cut, unemployment shoots up, 23 million Americans were left out of work, a bunch of them were reduced hours or reduced pay, many of the jobs coming back, it got bleak really fast, right? And I understand this because March 1st was the time I actually went full time from my previous employer to full time to running my agency again that I'd started 5 years ago, but to actually doing it full time again. Totally get it. I was there. But one of the things that I want to encourage you guys on as we're going through this, encourage this group on, is even in the hardest times, even in April of 2020, and if you're probably on this video, there's a high probability that you've kind of survived the storm, or you're looking for the next, you've gone through it, it's done. Even in April, if you were out searching for a job, there was still 211,000 new jobs created in April in the United States. And so I tell you that story because in the midst of some of the worst financial times that you will face, there is always opportunity. And if you are able to look at your situation, not so much what's happening to me, but what I can do now in this new, like I have to take a different view at it, there's tremendous amount of upside. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And what we've seen from our clients is that those that are the growth-oriented, forward-thinking, not sitting around and waiting for the economy to change, but looking at it as an opportunity to adapt and grow, they've proved to do better than those that are just waiting it out. And so I want to encourage you that as you're looking at this, take it as an opportunity that in some of these hardest times is an opportunity for growth, because it really is. In our business, we've added 27 clients since this year. And as an agency, a small agency, that's been a big deal, obviously, during these hard times. And I'm saying that from an encouraging standpoint is you can grow a business even in the middle of this. And I also, as we're going through this, when you hear people in your organization say, yeah, we just got to wait this out, or there's nothing we can do, or any of that, take note, because that's not going to, that kind of mindset, that kind of thinking is not going to help you adapt through these changing times. And even in those that are in some of the worst environments, whether it be trade show industry or whatever it might be, the ones that have adapted and have looked at new ways to craft new products, whatever it might be, and there's tons of stories about them from our own clients, those are the ones that are doing the best. So I look at adversity as an opportunity. And I always think back, you look at the COVID, really what COVID did in the sales and marketing world is it just accelerated the curve. All the stuff that was happening that we already talked about in January, all COVID did was ramp it up faster. And so those trends are just growing exponentially during COVID. It's forcing a new paradigm in terms of the sales process, learning, market research, how we're doing marketing. It's making the B2B community think differently because we've been behind the curve from the B2C world for a long time. It's just forcing us to get there faster. And so I think as we go forward, we start talking about these trends and what's going on in the future in sales and marketing, a big part of this is looking at these trends that were already happening, looking at other industries where they've happened for a long time, and just understand that's where we're going. And going back to that adversity is an opportunity. My dad, plant manager, ops guy, quality guy, background, many years at a Fortune 500 company, always had in his office this framed picture, automate or die. It's the opportunity that says, hey, are you willing to adapt in the environment? If you are, I think there's great opportunity. So I would encourage you to do that. And so the rest of the presentation, we're going to talk specifically about where we're going. So let's talk about that. One of the things that we're seeing as we're talking to our clients and others in the industry is there are these silos, and you all know it. You've been in the manufacturing world for a while. You got engineering, you got sales, you got marketing, you've got finance, you've got all, you've got the different pieces ops, you've got all these different pieces of the equation. And in most cases, you've got VPs or people over the top of those. And if you're really fortunate, they all work well together. In many cases, they don't, right? But to be competitive going forward, our need to break down these silos, specifically on the sales and marketing side, is going to be critical. Sales and marketing can't exist, I don't believe, going forward and be competitive as two entities that aren't thinking about it from a customer perspective. Because there's enough going on, there's enough automation, there's enough efficiency gains and productivity gains in the sales process that's happening now, that if you try to just keep them all separate and let everybody do what they're doing, time is not your friend. And everybody knows on the sales side, time is an enemy anyway. Like time kills deals, right? So time is an enemy. So I think as going forward, things that you have to think about is the organizations that you're in have to pivot. They have to figure out how to work better together, because really what you've seen on the B2C side, Amazon, that customer experience isn't just sales. That customer experience is them getting you a product same day. That's ops. That customer experience is knowing exactly the timing to take your money. That's finance. That customer experience is you being able to look up your past orders, right? That customer experience is knowing what other stuff to put in your face because they know what else you bought. It's everything together that ties together in that customer experience that drives the buying habit, the buying decisions. It's all about the buyer, and it's said all the time. But in manufacturing, we have a tendency of talking about ourselves. It's very common. We see it all over the place. We have a tendency of talking about us and how great we are and all the wonderful things we do. We pump people full of features and benefits, and nobody cares. The reality is that the buyer is the one that they want to feel like they are understood. They want their journey to be easier, not ours. And so in order for us to compete going forward in the B2B space, we need to become more buyer-centric. We need to become less about us and more about the buyer and what journey they're walking through to make that journey as simple, as efficient, and as effective as possible. And we got to stop breaking these silos down and bringing them all together. And so when I approach this, when we have this conversation, what I'd like to do is take it from an approach of an actual sales funnel, because I think that's helpful in talking about this. And before I get to that, the last bullet point on this slide, 30% of B2B leaders see increased customer acquisition costs as the greatest threat. So if you're going to go grow your business, this whole pump and dump, spend a bunch of money on marketing, or this whole idea of I just need to get a bunch of sales guys out there beating the streets, all of that's driving up your acquisition costs for new buyers. It's making your sales and S&G spend go up. It's making it less efficient for your buyers to get through the process. It's going to be better for everybody, you and the buyer long term, if you can find the fastest way for the buyer to get through the buying process so that you can minimize your acquisition costs, which is what everybody on the B2B marketing side is really concerned about, is how much it's going to cost them to bring on new customers. So with that being said, let's talk about the funnel. And I'm going to talk about it from both the sales and marketing, because this is a sales and marketing discussion. I'm going to tie them together. I'm going to start with market research. I'm going to start with market research because I know that many of the B2B space marketeers don't start with this. And I understand why, because if you're a 10 million or a 15 million or even a $30 million business, you probably don't have market research as either a seat or even a product manager as a seat within that funnel. So you probably don't have any one person that's their job to make sure they're doing the research to understand what's going on in the space. So it's important that before you step out, before the old adage is, plan first, right? Execute second. Strategy first, execution second. So this idea of what are we doing first from a market research standpoint, that's where we need to start. The second step then is once we do market research, then people talk about marketing and they kind of lump everything into one bucket. Marketing is all of these different things. The way I'm going to define it today is marketing. When I talk marketing, I'm talking awareness. What I mean by that is, what am I doing to make sure people are aware I exist or my products and services exist? We're going to put that in one bucket. We're going to call that marketing. The second topic, which is becoming more of a big topic, especially in the B2B space, is lead generation. Now, lead generation is its own animal. So it can be looked at from the marketing side, or it can be looked at the sales side, but this goes back to breaking down the silos. The question is, how do I acquire new potential opportunities? How is my sales team loading the top end of the funnel? How is my marketing team helping my sales team load the top end of the funnel, right? So we'll talk about lead gen, then we'll go into qualification. And this is really important. So often you see on the sales side is, well, you just got to make 100 calls a day. And there's some truth, I got to make so many calls. I got a batting average, right? I need so much dollars at the bottom end of the funnel. So if I put enough, if I need that one sale at 20 grand at the bottom end, I'm going to probably need to quote 2, maybe 3 in order to get to that. In order to get to those 3, I probably need to have like 10 on the needs analysis. In order to get to that, I probably need like 30 leads or whatever those numbers are, right? But the important thing is from a sales and a marketing efficiency standpoint, You don't necessarily need to get this, the funnel doesn't have to be super wide. It can be a narrower funnel, which costs less and is less energy to maintain if you do the right qualification work up front. Not all clients or customers are created equal. You should be able, part of what we want to be able to do is understand who is going to drive the most value for the business and focus on those, disqualify everybody else, even if they might buy, but focus on the ones that are going to drive the most opportunity. Prospecting. Everybody struggles, you know, if you're in a sales leadership role or you're not in a sales leadership role, getting people to want to make cold calls and prospect. Let's talk about that. Needs analysis, and then proposal and closing to close out the process. We'll talk about those things too. So I'm going to take this next bit in terms of this sales funnel and kind of walk through what's going on in each of these places in terms of best practices and what market trends are. So let's talk about the market research piece again. What does that mean? What is a good market research? Do you have a marketing plan? 64% of B2B companies do. If you have a marketing plan, what is it? Have you looked at it in a year? What's incorporated into it, right? And so as you start to think about what's your strategy, whether it's a product roadmap, a technology roadmap, here's the next applications I want to go into, whatever it might be, having a basic framework for what that plan is, whether it's a marketing plan, roadmap, whatever it might be, it's important to start there. And it's important to start filtering out the noise that isn't going to get you where you need to be sooner than later, because otherwise you're just going to spend a bunch of needless money. So some of the things to consider when you start thinking about these marketing plans are, first off, what's your goal? Some people put a goal at, hey, I want to grow at 5%. Other people say 10. Other people say, I want to get to a certain market percentage. I want to get so many conversions. Whatever it is, do you have a metric around what you're trying to accomplish? We're manufacturing companies in most cases on this call. We should be built around KPIs. What are they, right? Value propositions. If you walked in the hall and asked your sales guys what makes you unique, could they tell you? Could your customer service people tell you? Could the shop person tell you? So understanding and having it known by all what makes you unique as an organization is important. Buyer personas. Who is it that you're selling to? Again, you might have 3 or 4 different types of buyers. They might have different buyer journeys. They might have different ways they want to buy. Some might want to buy through e-commerce. Others might want to call somebody and talk to somebody. So it's really important to understand who you're selling to and what they want to see in terms of information through the buying process and what decisions they want to make through that buying process and how you can support them through that. What's the growth strategy? Where are the areas that I can grow the most? What content do I need? Content's one of the biggest things for B2B manufacturers or people selling in the B2B space, because most of the people we're selling to are technical. A lot of the engineers are the ones buying, or people doing product lines, or people in the shop floor that are doing automation equipment, whatever it might be. They're engineers, they're technical, they're project managers, whatever it might be. And often, I can tell you from some of our clients who are in that high tech space, their 10 biggest website hits are all white papers. So what are you doing for content to drive that throughput? Channels. Should I be on social? Should I not be? There's certain markets, like the military, you can be on social and it's good, but you better be ready to drive up on a truck on the base and demo the product. So do you understand what channel and how you have to get to that buyer? And we can go through the rest of these: promotions, referrals, retention. How do I drive transaction value? What do I do for campaigning? Starting to think more holistically about what am I actually trying to accomplish and where is the best, most efficient use of the time, energy, and capital that I have to put my team on that journey. So start from doing the research, understanding what you're going after. The second thing is we go back to marketing. So let's talk about marketing a little bit. So there's a lot of discussion around this whole lead generation, market awareness. And the challenge on the market awareness side is it's like the old adage, John Wanamaker, who is one of the postmaster generals back in the turn of the 1800s and 1900s, right? He said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is knowing which half. The challenge with awareness is it's historically been difficult to understand the impact. Now with social on things nowadays, you can get impressions, or you can get how much website traffic and all these things. And you can start to understand awareness. But the flip side of that is I might get 20,000 people on my website, but 99% of them don't matter because they're never going to buy from me anyway. So you might actually see your traffic on your site go down. It might be beneficial because you're actually getting the right people on your site now. But there is still a general need for awareness. If your business is small, like many of the manufacturers are, you might not be a Fortune 500 company. People understanding you exist in various parts of the world becomes important. And so this discussion around how you create brand awareness and how do you educate your audience with the information that they need to make a buying decision, how do you build credibility, how do you help drive future leads, becomes a very, very important discussion. So again, back to the metrics, 52% of leading companies gate a portion of their thought leadership. And what do I mean by gate? Gate means in order for you to get that content, you have to give me your contact information. So this whole awareness piece can help eventually drive leads depending on how you select what you're giving to people for free and what you're not. And can you give, like many other industries have done for a long time, like if you're going to order a book online, you get the first chapter, but you don't get the rest of the book. Are there things that you can do to get people aware and help bring them in and then convert it to a lead generation opportunity because you throw a gate at it? So a lot of people are starting to work towards that mindset of, I have specific knowledge and know-how that makes my business unique because of my application understanding, because of my technology understanding, because of my product knowledge, whatever it might be. Is there a way for you to leverage that knowledge to become a thought leader, but do it to an extent that you can trigger it over to a lead generation to get them to come back to you? The old adage is there's no free moves. So by giving everything away without having opportunity to get something in return, there's a benefit to that, right? You want to have the awareness, but there's also the side of how do I hold enough back so they're actually coming to me for that next piece. But thought leadership has been a topic for quite some time, and it's only growing because what's happening in the website world was everybody's going more and more digital, is it's becoming a more crowded space. There's more people writing more stuff. There's more stuff out there that they can source. And so by becoming a thought leader helps drive your awareness. And if you're not, and you're not showing up anywhere on the searches, or you're not showing up anywhere even in advertising, people are just not going to know you're existing. So then let's talk about the lead generation side. So from a lead generation side, lead generation, quite honestly, is the top of mind. When you talk about marketing right now, lead generation is top of mind. Because everybody's looking at, especially now that sales guys can't necessarily travel, customers don't want to see them in their building, they're looking for ways to drive new leads. I can tell you in this year, since COVID, most of my sales many of my sales have come from new clients. In some cases, I've never even met, right? And so the ability for you to drive this lead generation side and understanding how do I convert in the process of someone coming on my site, in the process of someone looking at my white paper, into a potential lead. And so a couple ways that, again, reinforcing the point on lead generation, from a marketing perspective, early stages, when I'm trying to qualify or I'm trying to prospect, majority of the marketing, from an efficiency standpoint, because there's a bigger pool of people, it's a lot harder to call them all, are using more of the email or the SEO or the search marketing type of exercises. On the backside, when I am actually trying to create that content that people are being interested in, B2B by and large, articles, the white papers, the content generation around that technical nature, or specifically on a topic that's important to the market, is really what's driving people through the sales funnel. Next, we talk about this lead generation. People in many cases, and we've seen it a lot, manufacturers, smaller ones especially, their websites are really old. I mean, you go on them and you look like they're from the 80s and you're wondering, okay, are these guys still in business, whatever? And so they immediately want to throw out a new website. Before you do website, before you do digital, before you create content, I can't speak to it enough. Do your SEO search first. Do your SEO work first so that you understand that when you write content or you create a page, what is being searched for? How is it going to rank? And so you tie that into the work that you're doing. SEO first, content creation, website creation, tools second. And so if you look at it now, obviously B2B getting more mobile friendly is a very, very important thing. But starting from the fundamentals of SEO and search is a critical part. And it's not just in your content and your website, it's even in the stuff you're putting in your emails. Understanding your personas of your clients enough to, or customers enough to understand what you're putting into the email content you're putting together to even get them to look at it and respond, because we all get barraged with so much nowadays, right? And don't underestimate, people talk about, hey, social doesn't have any place in B2B, or it's a waste of time. The reality is that depending on the generational gaps and what's going on in different generations, LinkedIn is still, in the machine tool space, is one of the higher social platforms that people are using all the time to communicate information, and people are looking at it. So I would not underestimate social. Just understand that it's not necessarily all created equal for your buyer. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do all of it, right? At the same time, there's many tools out there now that allow you to do the same post across all the platforms without having to spend a lot of energy, right? So again, as you're looking at your lead generation process, you're looking at the various channels, you're understanding who that buyer is and where they go to get the information. And then you're building the right content that has the right SEO that's put in front of them in the right place. And that's a big part of what people are now doing in the lead generation space. The other thing is the advertising. Advertising could be, as far as the social media side, and I think a lot of times people are underestimating the social media impact on advertising, or a lot of people think about Google AdWords, right? So if you look at some of the industry best practices, if you're doing advertising already on Google, start to look at your cost per clicks. They're not always the same across all B2B industries. So take a look at what the averages are in that space. Understand what you're doing in terms of your spend. Does it align to what the spend average is in that space? Are you getting the efficiency? Are you 2 or 3 times better than what the average is or not? There's simple metrics to look at to understand that. And again, looking back at the LinkedIn case, content marketing and lead generation, there is a lot more of that being done now on the social platforms. So don't minimize that in terms of a look. And the final thing, and I think is one of the harder ones in the B2B space, is this whole idea of shopping online. If you look at that, they already want to buy online. We talked earlier about 1/3 would choose a vendor, but there's a lot of benefits, not just for your customers and the simplicity of getting product, but also for you to be able to connect what's happening on the e-commerce store back to what is or is not working in terms of your marketing, your lead generation, all the rest of it. It's a lot cleaner trail when you put somebody through social, they go right to your e-commerce site, they either opt out of a cart or they buy something to know what's working and what isn't, versus having to call up everybody through a normal sales process and try to figure that out. So there's both benefits in terms of the customer buying experience, but you understanding what also is working and what isn't working in terms of that buyer journey. So don't underestimate the power of an online store. Now, I know there's a whole bunch of discussions around how that impacts your distributors and your reps. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, especially if you set up ways, which are easy to do, to set up ways so that they get credit for it, right? They might have pushed people to you. That's okay. So I'm not trying to be negative to what your channel partners do. Your channel partners are important, but there's ways to help their channel partner and the buyer get through that buyer journey more effectively and support everybody in the process. And finally, on the lead generation, again, we talked briefly about is the analytics side. So this whole idea of being able to track what is and isn't working, what emails are working. Can you do A/B testing between 2 emails to know which content worked and which one didn't? Can you do reporting back to say, here's the traffic after these different social posts, and these are the times that seem to be working, and these times the posts don't seem to, they fall flat. Or these are the posts that content-wise are working, and these are the posts that are falling flat. There's a tremendous amount of analytic power of refining your marketing approach because you actually have the data to make some decisions based on it. And so again, I'm strongly encouraging you to be able to go down that road so that you can actually make some decisions. And the thing with marketing is kind of like a website. You're not going to throw the website up and say, oh, done for the next 10 years. Lead generation marketing is a month in, month out, constantly evolving, changing thing that you're always working on. It should just be a part of your sales organization and what they're doing every single month. Now, I could argue that as a bias, and I'll put up my arm and say, yes, my agency does that, and I could be biased in that. But I can tell you, in being a sales and VP of sales and marketing and running international sales teams, I totally undervalued the benefit of doing the lead generation and mapping that and regularly monthly looking at ways to improve it, because, hey, I already had the website up. So having sat in that seat before and knowing myself how much I undervalued it in the past, I only can reinforce the fact of what we've seen and the benefits it brings as you do a better job mapping out the sales process and understanding on a month-by-month basis how you can improve that customer journey and how you can improve the conversion rates from step to step through that process to help your sales guys. Sales guys will take the path of least resistance. If you can make that path simpler for them and the customer, everybody wins. So another thing that many haven't done, at least from the experience that we've run into yet, but it's coming, is on the qualification side. And what I mean by qualification is, yes, not all buyers, not all customers are created equal. There are certain aspects of each customer, or the ones that you do a lot of business with and ones that you don't. And if you go out and you analyze the ones you do a lot of business with, and you can map out the filter process that says, these are the ones, if they fit in this bucket, we always kill it, right? So if you can build that filter, the beauty of that is you can use that filter on future business. And you can weed out the stuff that's got low probability. It doesn't mean you wouldn't take the order, obviously, right? If we're going to get the order, we'd probably take the order. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend any money on the sales and marketing side to cultivate more of those accounts. And so this idea of looking at, instead of a big net or a big shotgun and blasting it out there, making a whole bunch of calls, I would argue what you really want to do, and what's happening more and more, and the people that I've seen more successful with it, are rifling down the number of target accounts they have. The reality is in sales and marketing, you probably have a couple big clients. And if you would land one this year, your sales would hit your sales target. You don't need 100. You probably need a few. And so by getting the team focused around what does it take to get one of those or two of those big ones, or a couple of the key types, allows you to refine the process and actually start scoring those that are coming through the pipe to understand who's a good lead and who isn't a good lead, or who's the ones that we want to spend time with and some ones we don't want to spend time with. And the other thing on this is, this doesn't have to be done by sales. So you don't have to have a $100,000 sales guy do your qualification. You can probably get an admin who can go through a list and look up their websites and cover 80% of your qualification criteria. Because in most cases, the stuff that you're looking for basic criteria is all public knowledge. You know, if you're going after a Fortune 500 company, it's obvious who they are. If you're trying to go after even smaller businesses, there's ways to look up their size and revenue based on, you know, Dun Bradstreet or something else, or there's ways to look up the number of employees they have. You can look at their website and see the kind of products they have. You can start to draw in a lot of this, and a lot of this pre-qualification work does not have to be done by a higher paid salesperson. They can be done by somebody else in the organization that never has to even talk to anybody, but can do some of this pre-qualification work and simplify that for the sales team as a whole. There's more and more, as you guys probably know, there's more and more work being done on inside sales all the time. And I do hear both. I hear people say it's really hard to get a hold of people during COVID. It's not really hard to get a hold of people during COVID. And if the sales guy is telling you that, it's not true, okay? It's actually way easier to get a hold of people during COVID. So the reality is that you can actually do a lot of this pre-qualification work and figure out a lot of what you need without having to pay a lot of money to get that base list that then you can start marketing to, then you can start building lead generation off of. That's a tighter list, less spend, you know, more efficient for the next person up the chain that has to go like a salesperson and actually have to work through it. Instead of them having to call this full list, they can actually call the short list. So I would highly recommend that, and you see this as you're going forward in your sales journey, is don't underestimate the power of qualification. And the clients that we're working with, the customers that we're seeing that are doing the best, are doing a better job qualifying up front to focus their sales and marketing efforts around those that have the highest probability of becoming clients or customers. So now you've got your list. Let's assume that even whether it's sales or admin, whoever did it, they've come up with a short list of potential people. that they got to call. Now someone's still got to call, right? At some point, yes, you can funnel everybody through e-commerce, but I'm sorry, not everything in B2B, as you all know, is going to be funneled through e-commerce. At some point, someone's got to find somebody in the organization that's going to make a decision. What we find a lot is it's amazing how undertrained a lot of sales organizations are. And what I mean by that is, if you sat down with your sales team, could they tell you what your value proposition is? Would it make sense? Would it resonate with your customer? Were they prepared? So if you look here at the cold calling stats and you look at the B2B space, and it's a little shocking, 82% of B2B buyers think sales reps are unprepared. So that means you're going through doing all these rotodials, but no one's ever trained the sales guy of what barriers, what objections, what are they going to run into? What are the 3 key value proposition pieces that we have? And we can just simply ask the question instead of jumping into our sales pitch, which immediately turns everybody off. Just like you get calls all the time from solicitors and you're ready to hang up the phone. In many cases, you don't even talk to them. But are we preparing the sales team for those initial calls? And the companies that are doing well are doing just that. They're on preparing, training sales guys to say, here are the objectives you're trying to cover. Here are the barriers you're going to run into. We don't need 100. Let's pick 3 things that make us unique. And let's simply ask the question, is this ever a problem? Are you running into these challenges? If the answer is no to all the first 3, are there any challenges that you are running into that you really wish somebody could help you with? And if they still say no, maybe they've just been disqualified. Maybe you can simply ask them at that point, wow, can you tell me more about what you're doing? Because I have never met anybody that has no problems. So the point of that is, how are we training our sales guys from a B2B cold calling standpoint? Are they prepared? Do they understand what's going on currently in the industry? Are they ready to talk shop? Do they understand what our value proposition is? Do they understand how to even ask questions to figure out what the pain points are? Is it wrapped into your sales process? So literally the questions that they're asking and the process that they're going through is your sales process and not your customer's process, where they just want to extract all the information out of you and then never call you again? Start thinking about how you're doing prospecting, because the ones that are doing it well have a very well-trained sales team. And it always is hard at first because you have to start slow. It takes time to get to the place where you understand your own sales process well enough to understand what those conversations are, what those barriers are, and how to train a person to go through that journey. You also might find that after a while, you might not even need a salesperson for that initial call. You might know it so well in the questions that they're going to ask, you can create a video and send the video ahead of time and knock out 2 or 3 of those questions right away before you even have that first call. So understanding your sales process and where your sales guys fit in and how they're supportive in that journey is really key. So then you go into the needs analysis. And again, marketing should be involved in this. So for example, you get done with that initial call. What is already pre-built from a marketing standpoint? Video, email templates, PDFs, whatever it is, to help that potential buyer move through what is typically in the B2B space, a needs analysis phase. Like, what do I need next? And we look at it in terms of, like, I've been trained a number of different ways. There's a lot of different sales processes, but understanding key pain points, whether it's motivation, money, methodology, market options, or I'm in the process of talking about a project. Do I understand spec, schedule, cost? What is your method? Good sales organizations have a good, simple way to walk through the needs analysis so they don't miss stuff that then down the road engineering or ops has to deal with, which goes back to the siloing process discussion. If you're going to do this well, you need to have your engineering ops and the other teams involved so we can get those questions out of the way first before I even do a proposal. Because if I go through the needs analysis, I'm trying to get to know. I'm trying to understand if we are a good fit or not. And the sooner I can get to know, the better we are that we're not wasting time for ourselves or that potential customer. And I'll take this note at the bottom of the screen because this is important for those that are running businesses. Only 1% of the bottom 50% of salespeople have consultative and qualification skills as strengths, and none of them have closing skills. Please read that again. This is very important. This is not a guess. This is statistically relevant. Think things that I've seen with over 2 million salespeople, 2 million different salespeople surveyed, this is a true statement. So part of it is right now, you likely have people that are in your sales department that are not built to close business. And the sooner you get to that understanding and understand who they are and understand through that, my mentor of mine, Terry Slattery, who's been an amazing mentor to me, has helped me understand that it's why people aren't hitting their quotas. They're not built for it. And it's important to get to that brutal reality sooner and understand, yes, there's only so much you can do to train, because in the end, some people just are not built to do that kind of work. And it's okay. They're built to do something else. Let's help them find that place. So put together across your different disciplines, what is the way that we want to assess this opportunity to understand the needs of that potential buyer as quickly as we can with as minimal amount of pain and time as we need, so we can either say no or get to a sale. And then finally on the sales, I'm going to tie proposal and closing together, because quite frankly, you shouldn't be doing proposals unless you've already gotten an approval that when we do the proposal, something's going to happen next. Right? So if you simply ask that question, okay, we've gone through this needs analysis, best practices from a sales standpoint would say, okay, I've gone through this whole sales analysis and this needs analysis. If I do this proposal, what's going to happen? If they don't have an answer for you, it's a good place to start and say, all right, so tell me more. What am I missing? Or if they say, yeah, you can send over the quote. I say, oh, yeah, I do quotes every day. What happens when I send the quote over? Well, we'll take a look. Is there something that's missing in the quote? We've gone through it. We just went through all the needs. Well, no, everything's there. Okay, so everything's there. So if I send it to you, what would be stopping you from actually placing the order? Well, nothing. So if I gave this to you, you would actually just place the order. Well, no. So help me understand why that is. So it's the idea of going through that. You're not doing the next phase until you get confirmation from the previous phase that we're ready to move on, that the buyers actually said, I am ready to move on and I will make this decision. It's the old idea, there's no free moves, right? That all decisions have trade-offs. I'm going to spend my time on this quote. If you're not ready for the quote, that's okay. Just tell me now, let's figure out what we need to do before I go spend my time and energy on that quote. And the benefit now and what's happening on the marketing side is that the traceability of what's happening through the sales process has gone through the roof. And what I mean by that is now your sales guys can actually see every interaction that potential customer is having with your website, their email, your social, all of that in one place on a simple journey map, time stamped with every interaction they've had. So it's nowadays, from a best practice standpoint, there's no reason that you can't know where a guy's at and what he's hitting and what he isn't. It's not the days of I pitch the price of the quote over the wall and then I'm questioning because I haven't heard anybody and I keep calling him and he never calls me back. I keep emailing and never emailing me back. You don't need to do that anymore. The automation is in such a place and the marketing is in such a place where you can know if they interacted with that or not. And so these are the things that are starting to happen through this sales journey as you look at the future going forward and best practices. So with that, I'm just going to simply say, if there's anything I can be of help with going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out. You know, my organization really focuses on the manufacturing community, both distribution reps and manufacturers, and we help in a lot of these areas. If you just need to pick my brain, just call, okay? Our goal here is kind of the Mayo Clinic approach. If we can help, even if some cases, you know, it's okay, just call. So with that, I'll leave it. Thank you again for taking the time. I hope you guys have a blessed week and we'll talk to you soon.
Perfect.